I didn't expect her to look at me the way she did that evening, like she was noticing something she shouldn't, yet couldn't quite stop herself from noticing anyway. Her name wasn't the kind you whisper. It carried weight. Distance. A kind of elegance that made you straighten your shoulders before saying it. But the first thing I ever noticed about her wasn't her name. It was the way she held silence, as if she'd learned long ago that speaking too quickly could break something delicate. She stood by the old balcony railing, fingertips resting on the metal like she was testing its warmth. Loose strands of hair brushed her cheek as the breeze shifted, and she tucked them back with a movement that was too soft to ignore. I tried not to stare. I failed. "Long day?" she asked without turning, her voice almost too calm, like it was trying to hide a crack along the edges. "A bit," I said. My voice came out lower than I meant. "You!" She gave a small breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "You could say that." She finally looked at me then, really looked. Her gaze lingered half a second too long, and something in my chest pulled tighter. I shifted my weight, pretending I wasn't aware of how close she was or how the space between us felt smaller than it should. For a moment neither of us spoke. We just stood there with the sounds of the neighborhood drifting up, someone's TV, a distant car, a kid singing Ek Mota Hathi Gum Chala somewhere downstairs, off-key and cheerful. It felt absurdly out of place against the tension between us, but maybe that made it worse. Or better. I'm still not sure. She brushed past me to set her mug on the table, and her hand grazed mine, light, quick, but enough to make every thought in my head stumble. She didn't apologize. Didn't pull away sharply. Her fingers lingered just long enough that I knew it wasn't an accident, even if she might pretend otherwise later. "You always look like you're thinking too hard," she said softly, leaning one hip against the table. "Does it help?" I shrugged. "Not really." That earned me a small, reluctant smile. The kind someone gives when they don't expect to smile at all. She looked away immediately, almost embarrassed by it, and somehow, that tiny moment felt more intimate than the touch. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You seem tired." Her throat tightened as she swallowed. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Something in her posture told the truth her words didn't. Shoulders drawn in. Hands clasping the edge of the table like she needed the anchor. Confident, yes. But fragile in ways she'd never admit. I stepped closer, not enough to assume anything, just enough that she could step back if she wanted to. She didn't. Her breath caught barely, but I heard it. "Are you cold?" I asked. "No," she murmured. "Just thinking." There was something about the way she said it that made the air heavier. Like she wanted to tell me more but didn't trust herself with the words. She looked up at me, her eyes darker in the soft light, and for a heartbeat we stayed like that, too close, too quiet, suspended in something we hadn't named yet. Her fingers lifted, almost reaching toward mine again, then stopping midway, hanging there as if caught between a choice and a fear. "You should," she started. But before she could finish, a sudden knock at the door echoed through the room. She flinched. And her half-finished sentence hung between us, unanswered, electric. The knock faded, but the echo of it stayed in the room like a third presence refusing to leave. She opened the door halfway, spoke to someone in a low, controlled tone, too soft for me to hear, too sharp for me to ignore, and then closed it again with a long exhale. When she turned back to me, something in her expression had shifted. Not closed, not open, just thinner. As if the interruption reminded her of a line she wasn't supposed to cross. "Sorry," she said. Her voice didn't match the word. "People keep needing things. Do you want me to go?" I asked, though every part of me hoped she'd say no. She hesitated, not even a second, just a breath too long. "No. Stay." I sat at the edge of the small sofa, and she lowered herself beside me, not close enough to touch, but close enough for the warmth of her body to reach me. The space between us felt intentional. Calculated. Dangerous. She rubbed her thumb along her wrist, a small, nervous gesture I didn't think she realized she did. "You ever notice how quiet it gets at night?" she asked. There's a kid downstairs singing elephant songs, I said. She laughed, soft, tired. Right. Except for that. The laugh faded, leaving something unguarded behind. My ex used to hate quiet, she said suddenly, as if the confession slipped out before she could stop it. He filled every room with noise. TV, music, anything. Silence made him uncomfortable. What about you? I asked. Her eyes stayed on the dark window. I liked the quiet. Maybe that was part of the problem. She didn't have to say how long she'd been alone. It was in the way she held herself, not weak, but tired in places she kept hidden. And you? She asked, turning toward me. Anyone waiting for you? No, never? A few almosts, I said. Nothing real. She looked at me with this strange mix of empathy and something warmer, something she tried to smother behind a polite smile. That's good, she murmured. You shouldn't rush into things. The irony hung between us. Neither of us acknowledged it. I shifted, and my knee brushed hers, barely, but enough to make her inhale quietly. She didn't move away. Her hand rested on the cushion between us, fingers curled slightly, and I caught myself staring at the small shimmer of her ringless hand. She noticed. Her breath hitched, just a flicker, and then she slowly straightened her posture, trying to reclaim the distance she'd just lost. We shouldn't let things get confusing, she said. They already are, I murmured before I could stop myself. Her eyes met mine, firm, warning, vulnerable all at once. You're young, she whispered. People will talk. I swallowed. Let them. She blinked, and the smallest tremor crossed her lips. Not fear, something closer to longing twisted with regret. The kind of feeling people pretend isn't there until it's too late. Then, soft as a surrender, she reached up and brushed a loose thread from my shoulder. Her fingertips lingered an instant too long, her breath grazing my cheek as she leaned in just slightly. It was nothing. And it was everything. She drew back slowly, but her hand slid down my arm before falling away. For the first time since I met her, she didn't hide the way she looked at me. The room felt warmer. And the space between us felt entirely, unmistakably alive. The next evening should have been ordinary. It wasn't. I found her in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely tied as if she'd rushed through the day and landed here without meaning to. She looked tired. Beautiful in a way she probably didn't realize, unguarded, softer around the edges. You're early, she said, glancing over her shoulder. You sound surprised. I'm not, she murmured, though something in her voice contradicted her. She reached for a glass on the top shelf, stretching just enough that the hem of her shirt lifted slightly. I stepped behind her, close enough to help, close enough to feel the faint warmth radiating from her back. Here, I said, taking the glass before she could. Her breath caught. Not loudly, more like a secret she didn't mean to let slip. For a moment, we just stood there, my hand holding the glass, her hand still raised, inches from mine. Thanks, she whispered. She didn't move away. Before either of us could say something reckless, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, but her face tightened instantly. Give me a second, she muttered. She stepped to the side, answering with a composed tone that didn't match the flicker of worry in her eyes. Yes? No, I'm home. Why? I pretended not to listen, but her voice dipped, then sharpened. No, I'm not. I'm alone. Of course I'm alone. The word hit harder than it should. When she hung up, she leaned against the counter, fingers pressing into the edge like she needed the support. Everything okay? I asked. She didn't answer right away. People get curious, she said finally. Especially when they think they know me. Is that bad? It can be. For both of us. She stepped past me, her shoulder brushing my chest. Not a coincidence, not at this distance. Her perfume lingered, warm and subtle, making it hard to think clearly. Why does it matter what they think? I asked. It matters because I'm supposed to know better, she whispered. I moved closer, not touching, not assuming, just closing the space she kept trying to rebuild. You keep saying that, I murmured. But you don't act like it. Her eyes lifted to mine, slow, cautious, charged. I'm trying, she said. No, I said softly. You're hesitating. She laughed under her breath, a small, shaky sound that wasn't amusement at all. You shouldn't push me like this. I'm not pushing. You are, she whispered. We stood inches apart, breathing the same air. Her gaze dropped to my mouth for half a heartbeat, fast enough to deny, slow enough for me to feel it. Then, footsteps sounded in the hallway. She flinched, instinctively stepping closer to me instead of away. Her hand landed on my chest, fingers curling slightly as if bracing herself. A shadow passed under the doorframe. She held her breath. The footsteps paused, then continued down the hall, fading into another room. Her hand remained on my chest even after the danger had passed. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she pulled it away. That was close, I said quietly. It shouldn't have been close at all, she replied. But she didn't move back. She drew in a slow breath, eyes lifting again, this time openly, honestly, without the protective distance she usually carried. If I don't stop this now, she began. I waited for the rest. She didn't finish. Couldn't. Instead, she reached out, hesitation trembling in her fingers, and brushed a stray hair from my forehead. Her touch stayed a moment longer than necessary, trailing down the side of my face before falling away. The room felt too small for the two of us, yet neither of us stepped back. The world outside kept moving. Inside, everything held its breath. That night, the air between us felt different, thicker, heavier, as if every unsaid thing from the past weeks had finally decided to press forward at once. She was pacing when I stepped into the living room, arms folded like she was holding herself together. Her hair was slightly undone, the kind of messy that only comes from running fingers through it too many times. When she looked at me, something sharp flickered across her expression, something she didn't catch fast enough to hide. You didn't have to come, she said. That's not what you want, I replied. Her jaw tightened. She looked away. I don't know what I want, she murmured. Or maybe I do, and that's the problem. She brushed past me toward the window, the soft rustle of her clothes louder than her voice. I followed without meaning to, stopping just behind her. Close enough to feel the warmth along her back. Close enough that her breath hitched before she masked it. You're angry, I said quietly. She shook her head. Not angry. Just confused. Frustrated. Afraid of ruining something I shouldn't even have. I stepped closer, the faint scent of her perfume catching the air. Afraid of me? She let out a shaky breath. Afraid of myself. Her voice cracked the slightest bit, and for the first time, she didn't hide it. The vulnerability hit me harder than any confession could have. Without thinking, I reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She froze, not pulling away, not leaning in, just suspended in the tension. You can't look at me like that, she whispered. How am I looking at you? Like you already know? She turned then, slowly, until we were inches apart. Her eyes searched mine, cautious, hungry, terrified. She seemed ready to say something, then stopped, pressing her lips together, as if holding back too much at once. What happened? I asked softly. She laughed once, humorless. He called again. The person from before? Yes. He thinks. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. It matters to you. She finally looked at me fully, no walls, no polite distance. He thinks I'm being reckless. That I'm making a mistake. And do you think that? I asked. Her breath faltered. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Her hands were trembling. She tried to hide them by crossing her arms, but the tremor remained visible. I reached for her wrist gently, giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. When my fingers closed around her wrist, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. She stepped closer, too close, until her forehead nearly brushed mine. "You're too young," she whispered. "You keep saying that," I whispered back. "Because it's true." "Then why are you shaking?" Her eyes fluttered shut, and her hands lifted, stopping just short of my chest. Hovering. Wanting. Frightened of wanting. "I can't," she murmured. "You already have. That broke something. Or freed it." Her hand finally touched my chest, flat, warm, deliberate. She didn't move it. Didn't try to take it back. Instead, she leaned in the slightest bit, her breath brushing my cheek, her voice barely a sound. "You're going to make me do something I can't undo." I swallowed hard. "Then don't stop." Her lips parted, not in words, but in something dangerously close to surrender. She tilted her head, closing the last bit of distance without quite touching me. The world narrowed to the warmth of her breath, the faint tremble in her hands, the tiny, desperate sound she made when she tried to pull back and failed. Then, a sharp, sudden knock shattered the moment. She froze. Our foreheads almost touched. Her fingers clutched my shirt. And the unspoken choice between us hung on the trembling edge of a breath. The knock wasn't loud, just firm enough to slice through the air. She stepped back as if the sound had physically pushed her. Her hand slipped from my chest, fingers brushing my shirt like she didn't want to let go but had no choice. Her breath trembled. Mine wasn't steady either. I have to get that," she whispered. But she didn't move. Not at first. For 3 long seconds she just stood there, staring at the door as if whoever waited behind it might see everything we hadn't done, but almost had. When she finally opened it, the hallway light cut across the room. A woman stood outside, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, carrying attention that didn't belong to casual visits. "You didn't answer your phone," the woman said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Her gaze snapped to me. And lingered. I felt her measuring the distance between us. The air. The heat. The evidence of something she wasn't supposed to see. "Who's he?" she asked. The woman, my woman, opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "He's just helping with something." The lie was painfully thin. Even she winced at it. The other woman's eyebrows lifted. "Helping. Right." She turned toward me. "Do you know how long she's been avoiding everyone? How she shuts the world out?" She didn't wait for my answer. "I guess I finally know why." "She's not avoiding," I began. But the older woman shot me a look, sharp, pleading, silencing me instantly. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. The other woman sighed, frustrated. "Look. I heard what he said on the phone yesterday. I heard everything. So don't pretend nothing's going on." A beat. The revelation landed like a drop of cold water along the spine. "What exactly did you hear?" she asked, her voice tight. "That you weren't alone. That you told him a lie." The woman crossed her arms. "And I heard the way you said it." My pulse hammered. There was no way out of this clean. The older woman's shoulders slumped, but only for a second. She straightened slowly, graceful, defensive, wounded. "He doesn't know," she said. "And it's none of your business." "You're right," the woman replied. "It's not." She glanced at me again, voice softening just slightly. "But it will be his business. Eventually." With that, she left. The door clicked shut. Silence. Long, suffocating silence. The older woman pressed her hands to her forehead, walking in a small, shaky circle. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she whispered. I stepped toward her carefully. "She's just guessing." "No," she said. "She knows. And now it's only a matter of time before everyone else knows." She leaned back against the wall, sliding her hands down to her sides. Her fingers trembled, the way they had the first night we almost crossed the line. She caught me watching and attempted a small, broken laugh. "Why does it feel like I'm the one who should know better?" she murmured. But you're the only one who isn't scared. I am scared, I said quietly. She looked up. I'm scared of losing something that hasn't even begun. Something in her expression cracked, softened, opened. She stepped forward, slow but deliberate, until her chest brushed mine. Not fully leaning in. Just enough to feel. Enough to make her breath stutter against my neck. This can't keep happening, she whispered. Her hand lifted, hesitant, trembling, resting lightly on the side of my face. Her thumb traced my jaw, a touch too intimate for denial. But I don't want it to stop. Her forehead pressed against mine, the space between our lips almost non-existent. This changes everything, she breathed. And then, in a voice so low it barely existed. So what do we do now? The question hung between us, fragile, trembling, alive. So what do we do now? She didn't move. Neither did I. The world seemed to shrink to the heat between our bodies, to the soft catch of her breath against my cheek, to the way her fingers curled slightly at my jaw as if testing whether she was really allowed to touch me. I swallowed hard. I don't think we can pretend anymore. She closed her eyes, not shutting me out, just steadying herself. If I say yes, everything changes. If you say no, I whispered, everything changes too. Her lips parted. Not for a kiss, not yet, but in a small, helpless confession of want she couldn't hide anymore. She leaned her forehead against mine, our noses almost brushing, her breath warm and unsteady. You're so young, she murmured again, but this time it wasn't a warning. It sounded like an apology. You keep seeing my age, I said softly. But I'm right here. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, slow, cautious, trembling. The kind of touch that wasn't planned, wasn't rehearsed, wasn't safe. I've spent years choosing the sensible thing, she whispered. The expected thing. And did it make you happy? A breath. A forced swallow. No. My chest tightened. Her fingers tightened too, an involuntary reaction, a truth she couldn't pull back from now. She stepped closer until her body brushed mine, barely, tentatively, like she was afraid she'd burn if she touched me fully. Her voice lowered into something raw. You make me feel reckless. I let out a shaky exhale. Then be reckless. Just this once. Her lips nearly touched mine. A breath away. A heartbeat. But she didn't move in. Her hand dropped to my chest, palm flat, feeling my heartbeat beneath her fingers. She stared at her own hand like she couldn't believe it was there. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. She looked up sharply, surprised. You? Yes. I swallowed. Because this means something to me. Her breath hitched, so subtly it could have been missed, but at this distance I felt it. She cupped my face with both hands now, pulling me closer, her thumbs brushing my cheekbones as if memorizing the shape of me. Her body trembled lightly against mine, but she didn't step back. I thought, she started, voice cracking slightly. I thought you'd give up when things got messy. I'm still here. Her eyes softened, the first real softness she'd allowed. The kind that came after breaking, not before. Her lips hovered at mine. If we do this, there's no going back. I know. We'll be judged. I know. You could regret it someday. I won't. Her breath trembled against my mouth, warm, nervous, wanting. She closed her eyes as if accepting a decision she'd been fighting for too long. Her hands slid down my arms, gripping lightly, anchoring herself. Then come closer, she whispered. I did. Our foreheads touched again, firm this time, intentional. Her nose brushed mine. Her lips brushed the edge of mine, an almost kiss, barely there, electric enough to raise every hair on my arms. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the choice was made, fully, openly, undeniably. She rested her hand over my heart, feeling the rapid, uneven rhythm. I understand you now, she said softly. And I understand you. There was no fear left in her eyes. Only clarity. And the smallest, trembling smile that changed everything. The room had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that settles only after two people finally stop running from the truth. Outside the window, the city still hummed, cars passing, distant voices drifting upward, but in here, everything slowed. Everything softened. She stood a few feet away from him, arms crossed gently, not defensive anymore, just unsure. And in her eyes, for the first time, there wasn't fear or hesitation, just something vulnerable and real. "I kept thinking I'd ruin your life," she whispered, almost laughing at how small her voice sounded. "Because I'm older, because I've lived more, because you deserve someone without all my complications." He stepped closer, slow enough that she could pull away if she wanted. She didn't. "You're not a complication," he said softly. "You're the first thing in my life that feels like it makes sense. The age difference, your past, my fears, none of it matters if you actually want to stay." She inhaled like the words hit deeper than he expected. Her shoulders relaxed. Her gaze softened. And for the first time, she didn't hide the warmth in her expression. "I do want to stay," she murmured. "I've just been afraid you'd wake up one day and realize I wasn't worth the risk." He shook his head, gently taking her hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, slow and warm, grounding her. "You were the only thing worth the risk." Something broke in her then, not a sharp break, but a quiet release, like a breath she'd been holding for too long. She stepped closer and rested her forehead against his chest. He wrapped an arm around her, the embrace slow and sure, pulling her into a space she hadn't let herself have in years. No tension. No distance. No hiding. Just them. She tilted her head up, and he pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, nothing rushed, nothing demanding. Just a gentle promise. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, and she let out a small, shaky laugh. "You know," she said. "For someone who kept saying he was confused, you sure know how to calm a person down." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe I was only confused because I kept trying not to fall for you." Her eyes lifted slowly, openly. "And now?" "No," he whispered. "I'm done fighting it." The room suddenly felt warmer. Not because anything dramatic happened, just because, finally, everything made sense. She leaned into him fully this time, resting her cheek against his shoulder. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing naturally, as if they had always belonged there. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, holding each other, letting all the fear and doubt melt into something steady and undeniable. No more running. No more questions about whether they deserved this. They chose each other. Simply, quietly, completely. And it felt right. When she finally pulled back, she didn't look away. Her voice was soft but certain. "So, what happens now?" He smiled. "Now? We walk into whatever's next. Together." Her fingers squeezed his hand. "Good. I'm ready." And for once, neither of them doubted it.